Hey everyone, it's Ryan and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about the Guelph real estate sales for the month of May. Obviously, Beth is not here. She is out at appointments because it is busy season. And April, May, and June collectively make up over half of the annual Guelph real estate sales, with May being the big month. May can make or break a year depending on how it goes. So we're going to take a look at those sales. We're also going to see how May rolls up with the other months to make up our year-to-date numbers and give you a little bit of insight into what we saw. There were some interesting things that started to happen in May. But first, there are different ways you can get this information. We do 3 versions. The video version, obviously, which you're watching. There's a written version with some extra charts in it that we put on our website and update bi-weekly. You can find that at bethandryan.ca. And if you're into an audio version, we do have Guelph's best real estate podcast. It's probably Guelph's only real estate podcast, as far as I know. But you can find that as well on Apple and Spotify, as well as on our website. So we've got all the bases covered. If you want information on the Guelph real estate market, we are your source, and we update it bi-weekly. Okay, enough of the Beth and Ryan commercial. Let's get into the May sales volumes. So we track sales per day because it allows us at any point during the month to get a measure of the trend, how things are going, up, down, sideways. And last year's number was 5.7 sales per day, or 177 sales on the month. And so the beginning of this month of May in 2026 was rolling up ahead of last year. We were at 5.8 sales just before the May long weekend, but something happened after Victoria Day and sales slowed down significantly. We ended up finishing at 162 sales on the month versus 177 last year. So we did fall behind. I guess the consistency is that is the 5th straight month that we've fallen behind last year. Every month this year has fallen behind last year. And, at least there's that. Of the 162 transactions, 108 were in the detached segment and 54 were in the condo segment. So first, why don't we talk about the average price in May? The overall average price was $799,000. That was $912,000 in the detached segment and $575,000 in the condo segment. I'm going to take you through what all these numbers mean in just a second as we break it down a little bit further. I'm going to take you through both the condo segment and the detached segment, give you a little more detail on each and how we rolled up as a whole for the year. So let's start with the detached segment. 108 sales, with 390,000 being the low. That was a house on Stevenson, I believe, in St. George's Park. And the high was $2,292,000 in Courtright East. That was one of 3 homes that sold at $1.9 million plus. So those obviously helped prop up the average price. Without those 3 sales, we would be below 900 and not 912,000. Of the 108 sales, 21 were over the asking price, 13 at the asking price, and the remaining 64, or 69%, were below the asking price. Homes in detached segments sold at 98% of the asking price, meaning there is a bit of room to negotiate. I think most buyers expect, and most sellers should expect, that buyers are going to be negotiating in today's market. I will talk about today's inventory numbers in a few minutes, but we have noticed a big rise in detached listings, which puts pressure on prices. And so as sellers, if you had listed early in the year at market pricing, you probably would have had an easier time selling than you will now, where there's more inventory and the process itself takes longer as buyers don't seem to be in any rush, and buyers have time to compare homes, especially detached homes where you can find 2 or 3 on a single street. Compare, negotiate, and take your time to make decisions. In the condo segment, there were 54 sales. 320,000 was the low. That was a low-rise apartment-style condo in the Onward Willow neighborhood, which I still think is some of the best value in town, along with the ones on Conroy Crescent. The high was $1,285,000. That was in the Clearfield, South Guelph, one of the high-rise condos there. As mentioned, There has been 54 sales, which is not quite 2 per day, but pretty darn close. And this is the largest sales per day of the condo segment we've seen in a while. And you may say, Ryan, who cares? It's one single month. But it is a difference in that we hadn't seen sales volumes like this in condos in quite some time until May rolled around. And the other interesting thing about May is that the number of new listings in the condo segment really didn't move. While the detached segment was going up in listings, condos didn't move. There was nothing new. And for every 2 that came on the market, 2 sold. And so this is a real change from what we've been seeing. Buyer hesitation in the past, buyers waiting on the sidelines. Beth and I had 2 situations in May where we had buyers for condos. One of them had been on the market for 6 months, and our clients put an offer in, and sure enough, out of the woodwork came a buyer who had seen this property months ago and was interested. But they were sitting on the sidelines waiting because they felt no pressure to make a decision quickly, maybe waiting for another price decrease. Who knows what they were waiting for? But as soon as we put an offer in, they suddenly jumped out and also put an offer in. In both cases, it worked out for our clients. But there is competition out there, and buyers are not afraid to come in when they feel they need to. But in the weird psychology of real estate, sometimes all it takes is a buyer to know that somebody else wants something to validate the price before they jump in. Condos were bouncing around between 500 and 600,000 for the longest time. In fact, in early May, condos were at an average of 615,000, which is way beyond what we've seen in the last little while. But in the end, they finished at 575,000, which is still near the top end of what we've been seeing over the last little while. So it's an interesting market. Condo prices are not going up. I'm sure of it. But I do think that perhaps we've come to a bit of stabilization where buyers are starting to feel that there is some value to be had, and these prices are pretty good for what they're getting. And so we are seeing higher velocity. We're not seeing any new inventory or net new inventory, and some buyers waiting, but will act when they're pressed or when someone else is interested. In the condo market, 4 sold over the asking price, 8 sold at the asking price, and the remaining 42 of the 54 sales were under the asking price. That's 78%. One of the questions we do get asked fairly often is, now a good time to buy the condo, or should I wait for a little while longer? And of course, we don't know the answer to that. Now is a better time than it has been in quite some time. Will it get better? I think it probably might get better. If you are a buyer and you're thinking about buying a condo, get in touch, because there are some that are in more demand than others. And if you have maybe a unique condo, as in it's a corner unit, it has some views that others don't have, it has a better layout, more bedrooms, more amenities, those tend to go a little bit quicker than run-of-the-mill things. The other thing we watch for is vacancy in condos, and the number of properties that are vacant that are on the market is decreasing. This number was going up really fast, and at one point we were almost half the condos in Guelph were vacant, meaning the landlord was still paying for them, but nobody was living there. So that number is an indication of a little more health, I would say, in the market, but it's coming down. It's now at 38%. If we take a look at inventory in the market today, when I updated this on our blog on, I think it was a week ago, early June, there were 594 houses on the market. Now, a week later, we're at 620, which is a 5% increase in a week. So we continue to see a rise in inventory. It has been going up and up and up and up and up. For those of you who have been a regular watcher or consumer of the stuff we put out, we've been talking about this happening, and I think it's still going to continue to go up through the month of June and probably stabilize through the summertime. But we're quickly moving to a buyer's market, and the increase that we saw mostly in May was in the detached segment. We had seen a 14% increase in May alone, where in the condo segment, there's been a small increase in the last few weeks, as in a couple of percent. But the main driver of the overall inventory rise is in detached. And there's any number of reasons why that's happening. I read an article this morning that talked about how 10% of current homeowners who are renewing this year, renewing their mortgage, can't afford the new mortgage and are going to have to put their houses on the market. And that's one reason on top of about 5 different reasons why inventory is going up this year. Um, and so anybody who's holding on until later in the year, for any seller who maybe is hoping for higher prices, I can almost, without 100% certainty, but 99% certainty tell you that it's not happening. And we are probably going to see further price decreases before we see increases. So if you're a buyer, you're probably loving this. Of course, there's always two sides to a transaction. Buyers love falling prices. Sellers do not like falling prices. And this is a market that is, I think, going to benefit buyers. And as long as they are still out and interested in looking, the market will continue in a healthy, balanced market. It starts to get a bit rocky when one end, either the buyer or the seller, drops off. But I think right now we're sitting right in the middle at about 4 months of inventory, which puts us statistically in a very healthy market. So if we take a look at the year-to-date performance, how we're doing now that we roll the May numbers into the year, we look at 3 measures: the number of houses that have sold, we look at the dollar volume that has sold, and the average price of all the homes that have sold. So again, if you're a buyer, you're probably loving these numbers. If you're a seller, probably not so much. Number of houses sold, so the number of units, down 12%. So we're down 80 units. 80 less houses have sold this year than last year. If you add up all the dollar volume, so all the sale prices, you add them all up, they are down 16% versus last year. So that's $458 million this year versus $543 million last year. And the average price is down the least, but it's still down. It is down 5%. The average price of a house in Guelph this year is down 5%. That is $759,000 this year versus $796,000 last year. If you find this information helpful, you can always give us a subscribe, follow us on one of our formats, and we will be back in 2 weeks with some more updates for you. Thanks again.
Forget our fear of what comes after.